Hello my friends, family, esteemed colleagues. A question came about sinusitis, problems with sinuses. So many people suffer from sinus pain. I was one of them because I loved skiing, cold air shooting on my forehead. If I put head, my hair would sweat because I like to do downhill and grand slalom, so quite fast speed in cold weather. And the impact of a cold wind on my forehead and my face contributed to the problem. Now, the name tells us about the nature of this health issue. Sinuses are basically hollow spaces connected with our nasal cavity. There are several of them in the face. They have their name basically drawn on Latin or position where they are. So like we have the maxilla on maxilla and frontal on forehead. So what is this thing about sinus? What is sinus? Sinus is a hollow spaces in a bone. Now, yes, bone is hollow to begin with, but the density varies. And when we are talking about sinuses, well, it's a very small amount of bone, and it's basically hollow space with bone partitions, mineral partitions, and coated with mucosal tissue. Now, what is the purpose of sinus? Number one, brain has to be protected. No matter what equipment you are talking about, if it is used to do some work, well, it will overheat, so it needs cooling. Wherever there is a room that has processors in them, computer room, it's well air conditioned. Temperature has to be the optimal for the circuitry to work the best. In the car you have radiator filled with water that circulates, and purpose is to cool down the engine, but not only to cool down the engine, to keep it on certain temperature, because even overly cool stuff does not work well, so it has to be particular temperature. So it is all basically adjusted. No body is robot, so also has to be adjusted. And this is done partially through these sinuses, through these cavities, which are covered with mucosal tissue. Now, why would they be there? To protect the brain, because on top you have air. Forward you don't have anything, so you have this air spaces, isolation. You take neoprene, for example, rubber, hollow rubber, sponge, and styrofoam. You coat the room in styrofoam and gives you isolation from sound and temperature. Keeps the temperature steady. Now, if you take a sponge as the example, if you put it in water, it soaks in water, which means all the partitions are connected. You lift it up and water starts oozing down the sponge. Because, again, all the holes are connected. Same is with our sinuses. They are not individual holes. It is not closed cell foam like you find on cushions on outdoor furniture or boat cockpit. So the water doesn't penetrate. Every opening is sealed on its own. In regular sponge or sinuses or bones, all these holes are connected like a maze. And this way, pressure can be regulated. If you cannot regulate pressure, then what happens? If the outside environment pressure drops and you don't have connected passages, then the pressure inside increases. It is higher than the one that dropped on the outside. Increased pressure causes pain. This is why sometimes when people had a complicated break with a bone, and especially if they had then surgical procedure, scar tissue may form and break down the continuity of the passages of the bone. And what happens? Now you get part of the bone isolated, but it doesn't have the exit. And weather changes and you feel pain in the area. It's because continuation of connectivity of the passages was disrupted. So you have blocked one space to communicate with the other. And it cannot regulate internal pressure, adjusted to the outside pressure. Now, when we have a problem with sinuses, there is a problem with communication between the chambers of this labyrinth of bone structure. And the passage closes, and now you cannot regulate the inner pressure, and it can even increase. You may have toxicity there. Toxicity requires cleanup, so bacteria may come to deal with it. They produce gas. They have they have their own metabolism. They produce stuff which may increase the pressure. Also, movement. You will notice when you put your head down, it hurts because pressure has changed of the tissue and there is no communication out. The pressure cannot be equalized and creates pain. Now, why do some people suffer from this problem and some don't? Well, again, it's the same old. It is inflammation. Why the passage closed? It closed because of inflammation. There are small passages. And if the tissue, mucosal tissue, inflames, it may close it. Same like alveolus when we are breathing. If they start inflamed, they start closing because the pressure closes them from the inflammation. And you cannot get to the air. Well, same mechanism is in the sinuses. So inflammation is going to close them. Very often we cannot breathe. And it's not because there is so much snot. It is because the tissue is inflamed and close the passages. And you can deflame the tissue. This is why you have those inhalers. They all have inside anti-vasopressin stuff. So they relax the tissue, they relax the blood vessels, so they allow circulation to resume properly and get down the inflammation. Now, we very often breathe through mouth, which is incorrect. If the air is cold, it has to be warmed up before it goes into lungs, because then you are really affecting badly lungs. And this is one of the reasons why we should breathe through a nose, because all these chambers, they have purpose of controlling also the temperature of the air coming into the body and controlling the humidity. So they will moisturize the air. If the air is dry, they will moisturize it. If the air is very moist, they will demoisturize it. They will adjust the level of moisture. And then, you know, if it's a really very humid area, you may have slightly runny nose because some of the moisture just is getting expelled, just comes out. But as it reacts on the air coming from the outside, the same it reacts to the toxicity, to the quality of the blood on the inside. If it is cold, the mucosal tissue gets deeper red, it gets more blood in it, because it has to keep warming this air that you are breathing in. Now, if your blood is already toxic, well, this brings toxic blood in there. And cells that have to control the humidity and they have to release some water, well, they will get dehydrated faster. And if blood is toxic, they do not hydrate. They close their pores. They don't hydrate. So what happens? They become acidic. And you are going into chronic cellular-based dehydration of the mucosal tissue in sinuses. And again, same like with every other chronic problem, when the acidity becomes overly high, and especially if it's high acidity, and which slightly brings inflammation right away, because the body tries to control it with forced pressurizing the area to push some water in there. And now it's a cold air, and more blood comes in, and you already have partially inflamed area, like when I was talking about meningitis, meningitis, the same exact thing. All things are connected. It's all the same stuff. So what happens? Passages close, everything gets swollen. This is why when it's cold weather, we feel more of the sniffles, because a lot of blood comes in to keep warming the air. And this brings also toxicity if blood is toxic. and it accelerates dehydration on the cellular level of the mucosal tissue of your sinuses, and you go into chronic problem. Here again, self-healer's protocol. You have to correctly hydrate and then allow cleansing, detox. And this is why, even if you don't have any problem with sinuses that you recognize much, but if you are overly toxic and already the area is toxic but didn't show the symptom yet, okay, occasional headache and whatever, well, when you start detoxifying, the level of toxicity in the blood increases and triggers runny nose. You start oozing with the mucus. It all starts cleansing, all starts being washed out. Even your eyes start tearing. Because now you are washing, cleansing the mucosal tissue of your sinuses. And if you suffer from sinus problems, then doing self-healer's protocol is going to liberate you. It is going to, remember, this is highly vascularized tissue. And highly vascularized tissue heals fastest. Wherever there are a lot of blood vessels, red blood comes, especially then if you help yourself with Beck's blood electrifier, because it turns your red blood cells, the iron in them, it turns them into magnets. And since the area is full with red blood, it will energize it faster and heal, clear it faster, hydrate it and clear it faster. So, sinus problem is a big problem if you ask doctors. And it drags into chronic problems, and you always are hooked on medication because doctors do not acknowledge toxicity. They don't know how to heal and what is the real cause. Because, again, we are being told that inflammation is a problem of pathogen, action of gen and antigen. But it's not true. Inflammation is forced hydration triggered by the body. It's a mechanism, pre-installed program as a safety switch if particular organ or tissue is highly acidic. It cannot hold electric charge, cannot perform properly because it is too dehydrated. Then comes the override, which forces the area to hydrate, to accept some water. And it's done through the process we call inflammation. So it's part of the healing. It's not part that brings disease. You have this because you are toxic. And this helps you to detoxify. Again, contrary to what we are being told in medical school, and this is why doctors basically do not understand any disease. They're always looking for pathogen, pathogen, pathogen. Pathogen has nothing to do with any of it. And now, the big news, more and more alternate medical doctors are using bacteria and putting bacteria or parasites to clear particular health issue. Well, Ioannis was talking about it for years. But again, we don't need this. All we need to is allow body to cleanse. And it will do it because it's programmed to do it. But again, it needs water. And it does not have water if you don't have plasma, if blood plasma is low. So you have to raise it. Blood plasma is water with minerals. Minerals come through salt, not through veggies. And this is why everybody is wrong. Doctors are wrong, and the alternative medicine gurus are wrong because they kind of realize the problem, but then to solve it they use vegetables because they're under the opinion, again, taken from the Rockefeller-controlled medical science, that vegetables bring minerals into the body. And it's not so. It's salts. This is why you have vegans eating vegetables without salt, because salt is problematic. And we get all the minerals we need through vegetables. And they all become frail, and they all end up being chronically ill, which shows at one point when body can no longer handle it without showing a symptom. And then the whole freaking body goes bonkers. So keep that in mind. Simple, again, this is why self-healers protocol is so effective in every type of a disease. Because it's not a protocol. It is a guide to healthy living. It shows you what you need to hydrate the body and what you need to feed the body so you are not poisoning it at the same time. And body is made in a way to self-maintain itself, to self-heal. And who heals you? Are your genes. Because as soon as you start doing the correct things, you starting changing environment in your body, your genes start shifting and giving different instruction to your cellular structure. And you start healing. You have millions of doctors in your body that know exactly what to do because they are programmed correctly by the Creator. Nobody can heal you. Only body itself can do it, because the only sensors that you have that know what's happening are your genes. And they'll do the job. So, if you suffer from sinus problems, go to self-healers protocol. And you will see, as soon as you start hydrating with plasma, diluted seawater or water with sea salt in it, structured, always structure it. Use your mind to structure it, your thought. And as soon as plasma levels increase, the sensor goes off, the switches are being triggered, and you go into detox automatically. You don't have to poison yourself to go into detox. You just increase level of plasma. And then you can speed up the detox by increasing level of minerals, so there is a big surplus. And body is programmed to eliminate surplus. So instead of poisoning it to do this elimination, because with that it eliminates also other stuff, it's triggered into cleansing. So you don't need to use toxic plants. You just increase level of minerals. And you go into detox. Again, detox, like anything else, it's a special vibration. And when your body vibrates with vibration of detox, this is a signaling process. well, this vibration can be affecting other people in your area. So if somebody is very toxic and on a verge of triggering the detox, comes into your vicinity, and you are vibrating with the frequency of detox, bingo, they get triggered and they'll have symptoms. And it's always symptoms of flu. It's laughably simple. But because of our miseducation, of our indoctrination through lies, where everything is scientifically complicated, the more educated you are, the more indoctrinated and misguided you are, it's more difficult to accept the truth. Because again, the brain has to be now recalibrated. And this takes time and will. You have to have will to do it. Majority people, especially professionals, you have your license. You worked hard to get licensed. To pass through medical school is a difficult stuff. So then you cherish your diploma. Oof, I am doctor. What is your name? Oh, I am Dr. Jerry. Oh, doctor, your name? No, it's a freaking title to show yourself that you are better than others because you have this big knowledge. You are actually moron. All this knowledge that you have is a bullshit knowledge. It's not real knowledge. And prevents you to actually grasp the truth as you see it. No? We have to let go. Let go of the ego. Let go of seeing ourselves as better as somebody else. We are all just robots. Our soul is one. We have the same soul. It's only that our ego, consciousness of physicality, sees each one of us as a separate. And then this separate is better than the other separate because of brainwashing. Thank you for listening. I hope that this explanation of sinusitis is going to help you. Stop using all different inhalers because they are drugs. They prevent your robot to work properly. Just give it what it needs. Give it plasma. Correct your diet. And allow self-healing mechanism, the autopilot of health, to kick in and do the job. It's so simple. Thank you for listening. Love you all.